It is 2 in the morning and your toddler is screaming again. Not crying, screaming. The kind that cuts right through the walls, through your exhaustion, through every last nerve you have left. You stumble down the hall, you pick them up, and the moment their small, warm body presses against yours, they stop. Instantly. Like you flipped a switch. And part of you feels relief. Pure animal relief. But another part of you is already hearing the voices. Your mother-in-law, your pediatrician, the parenting forum you made the mistake of reading at midnight. You let them sleep with you again, didn't you? You're creating bad habits. You're going to regret this. They'll never learn to be independent. You're making this worse. So you stand there in the dark, holding your toddler, exhausted beyond words, wondering if you are fundamentally failing at this, wondering if every instinct you have is wrong. I want you to hear this clearly before we go any further. You are not failing. What you are doing in that moment is one of the most neurologically sound responses you could possibly have. And by the time this video is over, you are not going to just feel better about co-sleeping. You are going to understand exactly why your toddler's body and brain are literally wired to need it, and why the Western cultural narrative around sleep independence has been fighting against human biology for decades. Let us slow down for a moment, because what is happening inside your toddler's brain at 2 in the morning is not defiance, it is not manipulation, and it is absolutely not a bad habit you created. Your toddler's prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, self-regulation, and the ability to self-soothe, is not just underdeveloped. It is structurally incomplete. Neuroscientists are now clear that this region of the brain does not reach meaningful functional maturity until somewhere between ages 25 and 30. That is not a metaphor. That is neurobiology. What that means for your 2-year-old is that when the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, fires a signal of distress in the dark and alone at night, there is literally no developed neural architecture available to respond with calm. There is no internal voice saying, "It is okay, you are safe, this feeling will pass." That voice requires a prefrontal cortex to generate, and your toddler does not have one yet. So when they scream, they are not manipulating you. They are being overwhelmed by a biological alarm system that has no internal off switch. And the only off switch that exists for them, the only regulation tool their nervous system recognizes, is you. I want to ask you something, and I genuinely want you to answer in the comments. Before you learned anything about toddler brain development, what did you think was happening when your child refused to sleep alone? Because most parents I speak to believed one of two things. Either their child was being stubborn, or they had somehow created this problem through their own parenting choices. And I want to know if that was you, because you are absolutely not alone in that belief. Here's where the science starts to reframe everything. The concept of the independent sleeper, a child who sleeps alone in a separate room from birth and self-soothes reliably through the night, is an invention. It is not a biological baseline. It is a cultural construction that became dominant in Western societies, particularly in the United States and Northern Europe, roughly in the 19th and 20th centuries, driven by industrialization, shifting family structures, and eventually a pediatric culture that prioritized physical independence as a marker of healthy development. But when researchers began looking at this through a cross-cultural and evolutionary lens, the picture changed dramatically. Anthropologist James McKenna at the University of Notre Dame has spent decades studying mother-infant co-sleeping and has documented something remarkable. Infants and toddlers who sleep near their caregivers exhibit more stable breathing patterns, more regulated body temperature, higher arousal thresholds that actually protect against certain sleep disorders, and measurably lower cortisol levels throughout the night. The proximity to a caregiver is not a comfort crutch. It is a biological regulatory mechanism. Your child's nervous system is not malfunctioning when it seeks your presence at night. It is working exactly as evolution designed it to work. The problem is that we live in a culture that decided biology was inconvenient and built an entire parenting ideology around overriding it, and then blamed parents and children for struggling. Now, here is what typically happens in the parenting narrative that most families are handed. The child wakes at night and cries. The parent is told not to respond, or to respond minimally, or to follow a graduated extinction protocol where the child learns that crying will not be answered. The theory is that the child will eventually learn to self-soothe, and sometimes, functionally, they do stop crying. But what the research now shows is that what we are often measuring in those cases is not the child learning emotional regulation. It is the child learning that the alarm will not be answered. Pediatric sleep researcher Wendy Middlemiss published findings showing that even after infants stopped crying during extinction-based sleep training, their cortisol levels, a direct biological marker of stress, remained elevated. The external behavior changed. The internal stress response did not. Your toddler is not broken because they cannot sleep alone. They are responding to a biological truth that our culture decided to call a problem. And there is a profound difference between a child who cannot sleep alone because they have not been taught to, and a child who cannot sleep alone because their nervous system is in a state of genuine distress every time that proximity to safety is removed. For toddlers between 1 and 3 years old, that line is almost non-existent. Think about what co-sleeping actually provides at the level of the nervous system. When your toddler's body is close to yours, their heart rate begins to synchronize with yours. Their breathing slows. Their cortisol drops. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone that is also a direct regulator of the stress response, increases. Their amygdala, which was firing distress signals in the dark, receives a flood of sensory input: your smell, your warmth, the sound of your breathing, your heartbeat, all of which their nervous system has been calibrated since birth to interpret as safety. This is not dependency. This is co-regulation. And co-regulation, the process by which one nervous system helps another nervous system achieve calm, is the exact mechanism through which emotional self-regulation is built over time. Children do not learn to regulate themselves by being left without a regulator. They learn to regulate themselves through thousands of experiences of being regulated by someone else, until those neural pathways become their own. The very thing people tell you is preventing your child from becoming independent is actually the neurological scaffolding through which independence is eventually built. That is not a soft opinion. That is developmental neuroscience. This is the moment where I want to offer you something that changed how I see this entirely. If your toddler insists on sleeping in your bed, if they scream the moment you try to transfer them, if every sleep training attempt has ended in either trauma for them or complete surrender for you, I want you to consider the possibility that you have not been failing a system. You have been fighting biology with a rule book that was never based on biology to begin with. And now that you understand what is actually happening inside your child's brain and nervous system, you need practical tools that work with that biology, not against it. The Toddler Sleep Blueprint is a step-by-step guide built entirely around developmental neuroscience and evidence-based attachment research. It gives you concrete, compassionate strategies for navigating nighttime needs at each stage of toddler development, for creating sleep environments that work with your child's nervous system, and for gradually building toward independent sleep in a way that does not flood their system with cortisol or teach them that distress goes unanswered. It was built for parents who are done being given advice that ignores what their child's brain actually needs. The link is in the description. It is the tactical map for everything we just covered. You are not raising a child who is too attached. You are not spoiling them. You are not creating a teenager who will still be in your bed in 10 years, which I promise is not how development works. You are responding to a nervous system that is telling you the truth about what it needs, and you are listening. And that is not weakness. That is attunement. And attunement is the foundation of every secure attachment relationship ever documented in developmental psychology. The fact that you are here, watching this, trying to understand what is actually going on inside your child instead of just forcing compliance, that already puts you in a category of parent that will look back on this season with a lot more peace than most. You are doing a hard thing, and you are doing it with intention. If you want to keep understanding what is really going on inside that small, chaotic, beautiful brain, subscribe to this channel. Every video we make is a translation of the behavior that is making you feel like you are failing into the neuroscience that explains why. It is actually proof of a healthy, developing mind. You do not have to navigate this phase alone, and you do not have to navigate it in the dark. We will see you in the next one.